U.S. Capitol Police say that they arrested someone Tuesday night on suspicion of assaulting South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace. Mace has come out strongly against having transgender women use the women's bathroom. She's been very active on this issue, and she tweeted the following: "I was physically accosted at the Capitol tonight by a pro-trans man. One new brace for my wrist and some ice for my arm, and it'll heal just fine. The Capitol Police arrested the guy. Your trans violence and threats on my life will only make me double down. FAFO, hashtag hold the line."
The suspect, identified as James McIntyre, a 33-year-old from Illinois, faces a charge of assaulting a government official.
Fox News commentator Rob Smith weighed in on X, replying to Mace, "Throw the book at this lunatic. Bold of you to take this stance and risk your safety for the safety of all women." An assistant news director at Florida's Voice News, Eric Doherty, wrote, "Pro-trans, imagine my shock." So this is not good. We should not have political violence or violence against members of Congress or anyone else. And activists on behalf of the transgender community who take steps such as this, or screaming at everyone online who disagrees with some aspects of the policies they recommend, is also not doing them any favors, but don't imagine we'll have much disagreement there.
No, I don't think we will. I mean, I think we're both fairly adamantly anti-political violence. We always say in any instance whenever there is a criminal charge pressed on this show, we note that people are innocent until proven guilty.
Certainly.
I don't know what Mr. McIntyre's exact ideological background is, whether he is very avowedly a pro-trans activist or not, but certainly it is that is the word that has been reported. Whether one is pro-trans, anti-trans, pro or anti anything else, I don't favour political violence. Nancy Mace obviously has put herself to the fore on this issue. The bill that she sponsored, I think you and I had misgivings about in various ways. She was seeking to bar either Congress people or Capitol staff from using bathrooms that were not aligned with their biological sex. But she made very clear that she was really targeting Congresswoman-elect Sarah McBride, a Democrat from Delaware, who's the first openly transgender person to be elected. That, to me, had a somewhat personal bullying tone to it, which I found distasteful. But that does not mean that I think that people should be assaulting Nancy Mace, obviously, particularly if that's what this man has done.
Yeah, like you, I was not clear that keeping the individual in question, incoming Representative Sarah McBride, forcing her to use the men's bathroom seems like it would also create discomfort. I understand the need to protect women, or the desire to have women-only spaces, and to think that trans women in many cases are not right for some of those spaces, depending on what that space is. I feel more strongly about this at the adolescent level, at the locker room level, if there's nudity in front of other people. Although I would say, as I always say when we discuss this, that I would just like to have more privacy in such settings for everyone, even if it's everyone of the same sex, etc., not even bringing trans people into the equation. I think additional accommodations, rather than retrofitting existing accommodations, is the happy middle ground so that we can continue to function as a society without hating each other over those things. Sarah McBride, I believe, said she did not really even intend to use these facilities, so it was kind of a moot point that there are plenty of I don't know, that you probably spent more time in the office buildings of Congress than I have, but that it is perfectly possible to have individual restrooms
I think
as well.
I think a lot of members have
their own
restrooms.
Yeah. They're living more elegant lives than the rest of us.
Living the high life and not being expected to use the public John one way or another.
But look, that seems like a fine, and thus this was not a necessary fight.
No, I largely agree with that. I think the broader issue in a way is that I actually think that the general public are more reasonable about trans issues broadly than they are given credit for. I was looking at polling at this recently, and it's really interesting the way trans issues break down depending on the specific topic. And it was your mention of things like changing rooms and so forth, locker rooms, that reminded me. So basically, there is quite broad support for including trans people in protection from employment discrimination. There is quite broad support for including trans people as a protected category in relation to hate crimes. And then that support or that public opinion flips completely, especially on two issues. One, the sport issue, which you and I have spoken about a number of times before, and also allowing people to be in accommodations of their own, according to their own identification of gender, particularly when it comes to things like jails, what used to be called battered women's shelters and things like that.
Yeah.
People see an obvious danger, I think, to that, and those seem reasonable views to hold.
I myself, I agree with you on your analysis there. I myself am not so enthusiastic even about extending the discrimination protections or the hate speech designations, mostly because I don't love those laws anyway on kind of libertarian grounds. I guess I see the argument why if XYZ groups are protected under this, that trans people should too, but many conservatives will say, well, why does this stop short of protection against religious discrimination or political orientation, which in some settings, or if teaching or where conservatives are so outnumbered or religious people are so outnumbered, should there be some kind of diversity consideration on those grounds and all that sort of thing. And then specifically, I feel even more strongly this on the hate crimes ground, where as I have done a lot of research and reporting on hate crime statistics, and I both struggle with this ideologically, because then it's not, the crime is not to hate someone, because that's First Amendment protected activity. It's if you commit a crime like vandalism or assault or murder or rape, and then there's evidence that during the commission of the crime you uttered something against a racial group or Jewish people or women, or then you could get additional penalties, but that has to do with your state of mind and is very weird to me. I've
no real problem with that, because not to cut across you, but I mean, I just think that if you are beating up beating up anyone is wrong. It is rightly a crime. If you're beating up that person because they are black or gay or whatever, I do think that exacerbates the offense. But
you still could have a judge or jury can take, when you get to the sentencing can take those things under consideration, as they always do. Then decide that your crime is even more heinous. But this is on the charging side. And, we know how much power prosecutors already have to overcharge people such that they have to plead guilty, because with the additional penalties you could be facing so much. So they're always pleading guilty, or in the vast majority of it's like 90% plus. You have to plead guilty at some point because you can't risk it, because they can overcharge. And this is one of the reasons they're able to do that. Yeah. So I would rather, if we're going to make consideration, either reasons for leniency or reasons for additional punishment, I would leave that to judge and jury discretion.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Just before we wrap this segment, Robby, a slightly separate issue, which is that perhaps this is my background, I grew up, as you know, in Belfast at a time when there was a whole political armed conflict there, and so security around politicians was very, very tight for legitimate reasons. Now, I'm not at all saying the United States is there yet, but there is clearly a lot of vitriol in the political discourse here. And, just in my own experience as a reporter and being around Washington, I sometimes genuinely worry that there isn't enough security around politicians, and this is not an ideological point at all. And so,
well, the repeated attempts on Trump's life certainly made me think that.
No, absolutely. And so there is, I get that there is a balancing act, because the more secure you make someone, the more remote you make them from the public. That's literally how it's done. But I don't know. When someone, Nancy Mace, yes, she's prominent, but she's one of 435 members of the House. When someone can get close enough to her to allegedly injure her in some way, that's not a great sign to me.
Right. I live on Capitol Hill. I see members of Congress, some senators, on the streets all the time, and they're not surrounded by security at all unless there's already been a threat on them or there's some person of a, if they're running for national office, in some cases they get security. I mean, this obviously came up with the healthcare CEO's murder. Some people have asked, well, where was the security? Does he have security? And my initial reaction to that, which I think might be wrong, frankly, but my initial reaction was, there's not a level of security you're going to have for a healthcare CEO that could possibly prevent an incident like that, where someone with a prior plan, a worked out plan to shoot you with a silencer is going to be stopped. Because to stop that kind of crime, you have to establish a perimeter, you have clear it out, then bring in the person, like you do for the president. You're not going to, I don't think, be doing that for for every CEO. Now this is a kind of behind the scenes CEO type person, not somebody who's been in the public eye, but someone who's for a big company. Maybe it is the case. So a colleague of mine at Reason said, well, when Jeff Bezos goes somewhere, they do exactly that. They have unbelievably professional security. So maybe it is possible to do it. I don't know.
mean, Bezos, though, was one of the top 5 best-known CEOs in the world.
When Elon Musk goes somewhere, probably like robot dogs to set up a perimeter of Tesla as he's carrying the sink to whatever the next destination is. All right, lots more still to come on Rising Today. Please stay with us.